Russian 90-day fiancé star Julia Trubkina has been acting quite strange on Instagram in the past few years, which led to rumors about her split with Brandon Gibbs. Julia and Brandon were introduced when his friend happened to watch Julia dancing at a club in South Korea. Once Julia and Brandon exchanged numbers, the Virginia man decided he wanted to make Julia his wife by the end of the day. Brandon brought Julia to the U.S. on a K-1 visa, but financial difficulties limited him from getting a new house for his wife. Brandon had to live with his parents at their Dinwiddie farm, while Ron and Betty Gibbs expected their new daughter-in-law to take care of their animals. Julia couldn't wait to move out when Rob and Betty's behavior got too overbearing. However, Julia became close to her in-laws with time. Their funny Instagram reels are proof that Julia gets along with Betty and Ron. However, things had not been fine between Julia and her husband. In March 2024, it was revealed that Julia and Brandon were filming 90 Day, The Last Resort Season 2 in Arizona. With Brandon's parents being too intrusive, Julia and Brandon had no option but to move out of the Virginia farm. The couple first moved into an apartment, but they were not satisfied. Their 2 German shepherds were too big to fit into the small apartment and had to live with Ron and Betty. Julia and Brandon were almost convinced by a man named Mark to move to Florida, but they turned down the offer as it meant moving away from Brandon's parents. In July 2022, Julia told her Instagram followers that they had moved into a new property in Virginia Beach. In April 2023, Julia cried on Instagram stories as she told her followers that her cash, cards, and important documents, including her passport, were stolen. Someone had broken into Julia's car and later used her cards for McDonald's and gas. Julia's empty bag was found on her neighbor's property. The police were allegedly of no help when Julia called 911. She cried about how she was not feeling safe. Julia admitted that everything in her life was in a hole, and every day horrible situations happened to her. She said she was crying every day, but did not expand too much on why. When Julia approached her neighbors to get her purse back, the female neighbor screamed at her for having entered her property. The woman accused Julia of being a drug dealer. While Julia thought it was best for her to leave the property, the neighbor approached her and threatened to shoot her. Julia provoked the woman by telling her, "Shoot me." Meanwhile, Julia applied for a new driving license, a social security number, filed another police complaint, and visited the immigration center. Julia had yet to receive her green card, and it was just one of the things bothering her. It was obvious that Julia had been dealing with relationship issues. Brandon never featured in any of her videos or commented on the subject of someone threatening to shoot his wife. Julia could have been avoiding talking about her marriage woes because of her contract with the network. However, in May 2023, Julia, who was fed up with fans constantly asking her when she would get pregnant, the Russian woman posted, 3 years from marriage or 10 years, it does not oblige anyone to have children. She wrote that having a baby with Brandon was never her goal. Brandon immediately created a post about his views on having kids with Julia. Brandon wrote that he had fans constantly asking him his opinion on children. Brandon added that it was hard for him to be 100% ready to have kids, but a part of him wanted to keep trying. "We had a conversation with Julia, but she said no," he added, without telling his followers what he meant by "we." However, Brandon did mention that he did not have the right to force or take a decision without Julia's approval. The 90DF couple argued about her decision to go back to working as a go-go dancer. Julia was working as a dancer when Brandon was introduced to her. However, Brandon didn't want her to do it for a living after she became his wife. Brandon humiliated Julia in 90 Day Diaries over her decision. He didn't like Julia telling him she could make double his salary by working as a dancer. Julia ended up going for an audition at a strip club behind Brandon's back. She passed her interview with flying colors, despite Julia thinking she was out of shape. Brandon had wanted Julia to get a job, but she said she'd tried and failed at everything she'd done. So far, nothing had worked for Julia. She told Brandon that her ex-boyfriend would have been fine with her working as a go-go dancer. "Then go be with your ex-boyfriend," Brandon told her. He told the cameras that he didn't want Julia to be doing what a lot of proud guys probably wouldn't want their girlfriend or wife doing. Julia may have finally revealed the reason behind her cryptic, emotional Instagram updates in July 2023 when she opened up about having depression. Julia revealed that she had been dealing with depression for over a year. She admitted she was feeling out of place. She spoke about how she often started things that she didn't finish because she lost motivation easily. "I'm angry that someone gets all the effort, and someone tries, and nothing happens," Julia added. She confessed that she was trying to figure things out slowly as her followers asked her to never forget her worth. Julia's immigration issues may have been the root of her sadness, but there were also the problems with Brandon that had been invisible to the world. In April 2024, Julia announced she was finally an American citizen. She stood on the stairs of the Walter E. Hoffman U.S. Courthouse in Norfolk, Virginia, with an American flag in one hand and a citizenship certificate in another. Julia said, "It was a big step in my new life." However, Brandon wasn't with Julia as she entered his exciting new phase in her life. Julia and Brandon also spent their 4th anniversary separately. While Brandon's absence at such a big moment in Julia's life hinted at relationship issues, there were also rumors of them having separated earlier this year. Julia had wished Brandon happy anniversary in April 2024 by sharing a picture of them together and writing that while they'd faced a lot of difficulties, they would continue to overcome them even though they were far away from each other. Julia told a fan, "This is what is needed at this stage," when they asked why she wasn't together with Brandon. Brandon and Julia are currently vacationing in Ireland. Julia went to Europe with just a backpack in September 2024 and has so far been to England, Scotland, and now Ireland. Julia is not traveling alone at all, as Brandon being with her and creating fun content on their trip confirms that they are still together. Although they might have faced a few rough patches along the way, no 90-day fiancé relationship is perfect, and Julia and Brandon are the perfect example of how couples therapy can sometimes be what a relationship needs the most.